Dimensions are 32.2 millimeters by 21.1, and the thickness has a slope here, so it goes from 16.9 all the way up to 19.1 millimeters. We'll see that it weighs 1.4 kilograms, just under 200 grams. So together being 1.6 kilograms in travel weight. At 10.5 by 6.25 centimeters. So the keyboard has got a very clicky feel to it. This is compared to my Acer S13, which has got a much shorter travel. This one is about, I think, about 8.8 mils. This one's got a 1.4 millimeter travel, and the feel is very clicky. If we close these laptops up again, this over here, the S13, it's got a 13.3 inch display, but if we put them side by side, this will see that the Lenovo with a 14 inch display has got a smaller chin and a tad smaller width, only the thickness being a little thicker. Alright, so the internals. The model I have on hand has got the 4700U, which is an 8-core AMD Ryzen 7. So this is based on 7 nanometers, and the turbo is up to 4.1 gigahertz. But as we'll see in this model, turbo is up to 4.2 gigahertz with hardware info. The model can get up to 16 gigs of RAM. I've got an 8 gigabyte model with DDR4 and 3200 megahertz RAM. This has a 256 gig NVMe. You can have a look at the specs, and judging by this, you can actually see that I've got a TN panel here. So the brightness is up to 250 nits, which is decent for indoor use. The main issue with this one is the viewing angles. So the side viewing angles are alright, just a reduction in brightness, but the vertical viewing angles has a major contrast shift. All Ideapad displays are 45% NTSC, and that equates to about 60% sRGB. Looking at the laptop speakers here, we've got front-facing stereo speakers, and I'll give you a listen here. It has Dolby audio built in, so we'll max it out. It's on the music profile. And here's how it compares to my Acer. At max volume. I've been able to use Dolby Audio, and I've created my own personalized profile. You can have a look at it. It's basically just maxing out the volume. So have a listen. This is music. Increases the volume by about 3-4 decibels and brings it closer to the Acer without distorting much. Okay, the unit I have on hand has got a 45 watt battery built in, and the cooling solution on this laptop is more than adequate for the 4700U. It allows it to use up to 37 watts peak and then stabilizes at 26 watts. So that's past the spec, AMD spec of 25 watt. And that's achieved by the dual heat pipe design and a large blower fan. There is also a 57 watt hour battery option, and this unit has 2 NVMe drives built in. So in my unit, the small 2240 drive is taken up, but there's 280 more available, the longer version. So you can have 2 drives running, and I tested that, and both work at the same time at X4 speeds. Now we're going to have a look at the Ryzen 7.
Looking at Passmark, we can see that intelligent cooling and extreme performance are very similar, where boosting the wattage in Ryzen controller gives us a 14% improvement at 15,858. Looking at Cinebench R20, we can see that Ryzen controller again boosts the performance in multi-core, boosting it by about 7% above extreme performance, and single core a mere 3%. Finally, Geekbench 5 gives us a score of 6,097 with Ryzen controller wattage boost, which is about a 20% improvement over extreme performance and intelligent cooling, where the single core saw nearly no gain. Here's a look at Witcher 3 gameplay on the Vega 7. We're playing at 1080p low in the B-roll.
Quick cuts, 1, 2, 3. Strong strikes now. Give it all you got. Never lock your elbow when striking, young lady. God damn it!
Position, Siri. Footwork. Remember.
Not bad. Now, Harry. Siri, see how Geralt holds his sword, its angle. See? If not for the Quensa.
Looking at the graph, we've got 720p and 1080p. The ideal resolution would probably be 720p high, where the frame rate average is 29 FPS. Looking at Fortnite, the 720p low, 1080p low, and 1080p medium scale very well. And with 720p medium, we got very strange results. So the ideal setting would be 1080p medium or lowering it to 1080p low for higher FPS. The low settings got an average of 101 FPS. Medium and high quality was not able to have a consistent 60 FPS experience, but a combination of high and low was able to give us a minimum of 63 FPS.
So my conclusion on the Ideapad 5 14-inch is that the 4700U runs up to 17% faster in tests like Cinebench and Blender compared to its rival, the Acer Swift 3, which also has the same processor. And that is due to the higher power that it's able to feed to the GPU with adequate cooling, and Ryzen also liking 3200 MHz non-L version DDR4 RAM. So that leads to substantial improvements. Then it also wipes the floor with the 1165 G7, Intel's i7 flagship. It beats it in multi-core at about up to 50%. So many different scores though, so on average about 50% higher in multi-core. single core though, it does fall short. So the Vega 7 GPU is able to play pretty much all games at 720p lowest, excluding select AAA titles which require more VRAM, 500 that's allocated. So Cyberpunk and Red Dead Redemption. Then having two NVMe drives gives you the option of connecting double the storage, or even adding an external GPU through the PCIe adapters, which is a great option for gaming. You could have an 8-core CPU and your external GPU, which could be upgraded in the future. So the major letdown of this specific model I have is definitely the TN screen. This laptop sells for $700, and the alternatives would be a recent special on Amazon would be the Asus Swift 3, the 14-inch version, which had the 1165 G7, and that model has a better display, and the GPU is about 30% faster than the Vega 7, but the CPU falls short and some other areas as well. Then for AMD, under $700, it would be the Asus ZenBook 14, the QI407, and that model comes with a 4500U, so the 6-core version, which is about 50% slower than this model. It gets about a Cinebench score of 2000, this gets 3000. And the GPU, it's got an MX350, which is about 10% faster than the Intel XE, and about 30 to 40% faster than the Vega 7. That model comes with no Type-C charging, and the NVMe drive is X2 speeds.